I do believe organizations tend to forget who does keep their lights on. I have been told, Gabby, nobody likes fluff. I'm like, that's okay, but I'm not going to change my quote unquote what I don't deem as fluff, but just a level of realness. I was saying it in English, and there was an individual that was translating it in Spanish to essentially just say thank you. Your hard work of wiping the mirrors, wiping the door handles. Were there tears? Yeah, because there was a shock and awe of no one's ever done this. Like, no guest will go out of their way, even at times, to say thank you.
In a world that often measures success by volume, we're pausing to listen for something quieter, the values that shape how people really live, lead, and love. This is Talk with Tia, conversations with everyday people living what matters most. Extraordinary lives, everyday values. Hi everyone, this is Talk with Tia, Extraordinary Lives, Everyday Values. Today, I'm joined by Gabriella Bedor, a Chief Human Resources Officer at TeleWorld Solutions, who puts the human back at the center of this title and speaks openly about the hardest parts of leadership, including layoffs, and the deep obligation to lead with empathy, transparency, and respect. This conversation is about dignity and recognition, especially when decisions are difficult. Hi everyone, I'm here with Gabriella Bedor from Telecom Solutions, a subsidiary of Samsung. So
Yes,
hi
TeleWorld Solutions.
Gabriella.
Hi, nice to see you.
Oh, nice to see you again too. I was looking forward to our conversation. I was kind of going to go at this. I know it's a values discussion. When I was learning more about you and I was reading some of your LinkedIn posts, and I found them very interesting because in your introduction, that's why I talk about you seem to be someone who puts the human back into the title of chief, human resource executive.
Yes,
And I think
yes,
that humans sometimes overlooked. I think sometimes human resource professionals have so much on their plate that
yes,
they don't necessarily get to deal with why this particular department was ever created in the first place.
yes.
So, I was going to start with kind of a difficult area because I saw that you wrote about it or you had a post about it on LinkedIn, and that deals with layoffs and leadership. And being kind of, I think, the empath that you are, that must be a very difficult situation for you when you have to go through this. Are there some thoughts around that when it comes to values and how you might prepare yourself, or what it feels like, or if there's some other listeners out there who are either on the side of being maybe laid off or the ones that are doing the layoff that you could talk about?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a great question. And the reason why I posted that is, first and foremost, I want people to understand I've been on the other side. So when people assume that I'm speaking as if I don't know what those emotions look like or what the roller coaster of emotions feel like, it's incorrect. I've been through a layoff before, and it's nothing that anyone is ever looking forward to having to face. So it's more of putting myself constantly in someone else's shoes to try to assimilate what it is that they're going through, so that we lead with that sort of empathy first, and the business decisions second, if that makes sense. Business decisions are going to happen constantly. And the reason why I posted that is, even amidst these type of situations that are not something that we can celebrate, it's what can we do to ensure that that individual leaves this organization with a level of dignity, leaves the organization with a soft landing. People need to understand too, severance is never an obligatory aspect that an employer has to extend. It's a choice. And so for us, it's a choice to provide severance for those that are impacted by large rifts or an elimination of a role. And in that aspect, it's okay, can we do something here a little bit more? If we know that the individual, God forbid, has ailments with their health, yes, it carries them for a month. But if we can afford it, depending upon the financial of the organization, can we extend an extra month just to say, hey, we're well aware of what is up against you from a medical perspective. We're going to give you an extra month of benefits. And so for us, it very well may never be enough for that individual impacted. And we certainly can understand that. But then when you're going through a layoff, we try to learn what other organizations tell us not to do, right? We're
Yeah.
not going to lay you off in a mass email. We're not going to lay you off in a phone call that's recorded at 2 a.m. in the morning so that it gets to your phone at 8 a.m. in the morning. We try to do the opposite of what happens in other organizations, unbeknownst to what they can or can't do. We like to have more of a human aspect, which is, this is a decision that's been made for the business. While it's unfortunate, it's one that needs to be executed. But in this process, we would like to extend you a severance. We would like to extend a little bit more on your benefits. And I think on the other side, I still want employees to tell their story. I want them to tell the story that they're mad, that they're resentful, that they gave their blood, sweat, and tears at an organization. But the story needs to be fulfilled that the facts are not spared, where it should say at the end, I feel and own all these emotions, but the organization still did what was right by me, and they actually took care of me at the end. Still not the situation I want to be in, but I'm very grateful to some extent that I wasn't left with today is your last day and you're getting nothing else besides
Right.
that.
Yeah.
That's where I'd like the full story.
I like that too because you also like talk about that full story and you say context matters. So to tell the
Yes.
full story, I know in management types of decisions or just in life,
Yes.
we can only be as transparent as possible. So,
Yes.
because people talk about honesty and transparency, but depending on
Yes.
where you are in an organizational chain, that transparency can be as much as you can give them. And
Yes.
how much of that, of as much as you can give them, is more kind of compassion versus the actual facts? I mean, they need both,
I
but
agree. It is
where,
such a tight balance,
it
right?
is, yeah, it is a
And
tough.
I think that's a tough question. I'm not going to lie, right? Because for me, transparency is key. And I think for my team, I think for this org, we do value that a great deal. That's why we're very transparent in our town halls. We have, connections with our CEO, one-on-one connections, focus groups, skip levels. We're very much front and center. Of course, we can never come out and say, well, people do ask though, I take that back. People ask, especially Q&A with our CEO, do you see layoffs coming down the path? And he'll be very honest to say, at this point in time, I don't. But if we don't get our revenue up, if we don't get our profits better, if we don't work a little bit more on obtaining additional, money, if you will, there could be an impact to the business. And I think when you take a step back, it's common sense anywhere, right? If you don't make the money, you can't withstand the headcount that you have. So it does revolve around, at the end of the day, the numbers, right? What the numbers look like. But at the same token, if I knew that there was a layoff coming, I think that I tout myself so much on the transparency of like, hey, everybody, look, I can't promise you a job tomorrow. I can't promise my own, but the numbers aren't looking too good. I would never say go out and start looking for a job, but it's one of those aspects where sometimes you have to read between the lines. But I also can't say, hey, listen, I'm going to give you 30 days. And those 30 days, I need you to continue working here, but go ahead and start looking for other opportunities because your role is going to be impacted. People could say, yes, that's what we want. That's what we want. And I agree. But what I have seen through my career is that when you do that and the person receives the message, you never know the emotions, the emotional state at how it gets processed. And a lot of times, as it should, it's a very big impact to the emotional hit and to the emotional state, excuse me, which is, oh my God, I just lost my job. The person is not normally productive for those next 30 days, and rightfully so. I mean, they're going through this, oh my God, how is this going to impact my family? Can I make my bills next month? What does this mean? So we rather be able to notify, yes, even if it's the day of, but we provide that soft landing to say, okay, today is your last day. Your job is being eliminated, but we're providing you X amount of weeks of pay. We're providing you, the extended benefits if we can afford. If not, we do try to align it to the beginning of the month so that that rest of the month, if they've signed on for benefits, they have the rest of the month for their coverage for medical. So I think sometimes, yes, sure, transparency is great. I'm going to tell you that your job is eliminated in 30 days. And 9 times out of 10, I hate to say it, you're not going to get the full engagement. You're going to get bitterness. And some people, you think you know them, but then they take it out on the org by compromising the integrity of, collateral. Things are being copied, things are getting sent out that should not be sent out that are proprietary. So
Yeah.
to reduce the risk to the org, it's we're going to cut you out today, but we're going to give you the 30-day notice period plus your severance so that you can land on your feet because it's just you have to mitigate risk. You just have to mitigate risk.
So yeah, so that's where the tough decision, the human versus
Correct.
the business, that
Correct.
just basically that business decision, which is interesting. That makes sense too, because I think you're right. I mean, just even in a small business, if I have to tell somebody I just can't afford this position right now, I'm making cuts.
Correct.
I do agree. You don't really, and rightly so. The person doesn't feel like that same vigor to come in and work their tail off for you after you're telling them that they have 30 days. So
Yes.
that's interesting. I like that. So that's not always the most enjoyable, obviously, the most enjoyable
It's
part
not.
of being a human resource executive. So what did it take? Like what drove, kind of drove you to that, in that direction of even wanting to be in this space? Because it's not an easy space. I mean, I was an employment lawyer
It's not.
and it's not. And people don't say, "Oh, great, it's HR." They kind of
Well,
look,
you know it best as an employment lawyer. I
yes,
mean, you see what the difficulties are. I mean, the joy, yes, anybody, it's kind of like anything in life. You always gravitate towards what gives you that high of joyfulness, of that instant gratification. Who doesn't, right? Even if it's
right.
buying a purse, you're like, oh my God, I feel great in the moment. And then
Yeah,
it's like, oh
retail
yeah, but that
therapy.
was like $500 that I probably should have used for something else, right?
Right.
There's a reality. And I think that's what separates sometimes the emotional state and the maturity of individuals that even even if you're in an organization for 20 years, 25 years, that hit of being told you're laid off, excuse me, is difficult, right?
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, though, you take a step back and it's like, if you understand business isn't meant to be fair. Business is run so that the business can be successful with the right people. But just like anything else, it's the evolution, right? It's the evolution of moving through business decisions, that whether they're strategic changes, whether they're innovative changes, whether quite frankly it's technology or younger in tenure, not younger in age, that bring a level of keeping them relevant in the industry and competitive, you got to make those decisions. And people, although it impacts them individually, it's never fun. It's never something that should say someone should say, "Oh yeah, just take it like it's no big deal." Absolutely not. But how I got into this was by default. I just love engaging with people. And sure, as everybody says that, but the engagement isn't always positive. I didn't say I love engaging with people only on the good. I love engaging with people holistically because I do like to navigate through those challenging times where it is going to be a hard, constructive conversation. But I guarantee you, because I have never taken that dignity away from you or I have never disrespected you, even when I have to tell you, listen, if you don't turn it around, the future is not here for you.
Right.
They know it's coming from a place of trust. They know it's coming from a place of respect. But how I found myself in HR, it was essentially being given that. It started as a recruiter when I was an intern, and hard work and sacrifice. That's something I think I don't see enough here either, not here respectfully in the org in general, is that people want the instant. I'm going to start and after a month I need a promotion, I need more pay. It's like, whoa, we need
I agree.
consistency and
That's just
sustainability, right?
generational, I think. Yeah.
It is generational, and I respect the drive, but let the drive turn into action. I can't give you what it is that you're looking for without a little bit of hard work. And if I tell you hours are 9 to 6, hey, it's okay if you work until 7 sometimes. I'm not telling you not to have work life integration, but I'm telling you that sometimes I need you to work until 7 without
Right.
having to be asked. And I do believe, I'm still very, very old school, that the individual that shows up consistently, that the individual that does sacrifice on occasion, um, will always, in some ways, stand out. I'm never going to be a proponent of sacrificing your life. I'm never going to be a proponent of sacrificing your family or the priorities that matter to you, even if it's sitting outside on a rocking chair with your fur baby. I think that's fantastic. But when it becomes obsessive, when it becomes too much, you will have a conversation with me to say, you're working too much. But I'm also going to equally have a conversation with individuals to take advantage of privilege, which is flexibility, and the performance isn't there. It's like, okay, well, I can't reward that either.
I like that because I think that like if I see something lacking in myself, I would say that
Sure.
I'm very willing to like hash things out and argue about a
Yes.
point, or like if I've been like working on something, sometimes the ex-lawyer in me is like will go down a rabbit hole and fight something,
Yes.
yeah, where I don't have to die in that hill. But I would say that if I lacked something, it's sometimes being assertive in those moments where I'm dealing with humans. So I'm not
Yes.
the employment lawyer giving, advice usually kind of after the fact. Somebody was fired, it didn't go that well. There's a malingerer or a harasser or whoever,
Yes.
whichever side you're
Yes.
on.
Yes.
But what do you think? What values were able to, because I love that and I feel that in your spirit. I feel that warmness, that the ability to relate to people, but I also feel like you can make those tough decisions. So if you had to give me your definition of personal values, what would it be?
Oh, good Lord. I mean, integrity is the biggest thing. Integrity and loyalty, for one. But you touched on it already. You need to be able to take a step back and self-reflect. Where did you go wrong? And yes, I say automatically you, as in the person that owns the situation. Where did you go wrong that you could have made it better? And when people come to me and I say to them, you have to have a moral compass and you have to have core values. And those things should never be shifted based on something that you feel forced upon. Those are yours and yours to own. And those yours to own tell very much a character about you.
Great.
And for me, what drives me at work and outside of work is the same consistency of my values.
That's good because a lot of times
Yeah.
people don't often
You
tell.
can't mask it, right? I mean, and when you do, you fail because then you're trying to hide behind the lies of who you're trying to be, and then you forget who you're trying to be, and it's not a good mix.
Yeah.
And it just isn't. And I think passion is a driving force. You have to love what you do, even on the days that you don't. I don't view my work as work. I view my work as an enjoyment that gets me through each day, whether it's challenging, whether it's winning, sometimes I'm losing. But the one thing I stand strong on is every day at the end, I'm like, how could I have done something better if there was a situation or just me as a human? Is I'm not trying to be God. I am not trying to be perfect.
Yeah.
But what I am trying to do is to be better from the day before.
Yeah.
And I do wish people that may have challenges in their career. I still have challenges in my career. It'll never end until the day you die. If you stop learning, there's something wrong. I'm sorry, there
Great.
just is.
Great.
But when you take that step back and you maturely come into the conversation, even at times if it's heated, because I understand that we're human, not disrespectful, but heated.
Yeah.
Let's talk through it. But please do not come to me, whether it's professionally or personally, in a conversation to say, pointing fingers that everything around you has caused you where you are today. It's like because you always have 1%. And that 1% of contribution still means that you have fault. And it means that you have responsibility and accountability on how you could have potentially changed the situation to maybe not make it better, but to make it in a harmonized fashion. And when people are able to come to the table and say, Gabby, I'm really challenged with my manager. I've tried A, B, C, and D, and I feel like I'm not getting through. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. How was your tone? How did you deliver it? How was the manager when you said one, two, three, and four? What was their reaction? And if it was one of that, it was just not on the same playing field, it's different than you coming at me and saying, well, I delivered it, I was disrespectful, and they didn't give me the time of day. So there's a lot of aspects that go into conversations that I still believe in every conversation you exhibit your values, which means you're exhibiting your character. And I think that's something that's important.
You shared some of your personal values that are kind of non-negotiables, and they were integrity, loyalty, and self-awareness. Those are just a few of the ones that you mentioned. But I think even more than that, you exemplify so much more,
Sure.
especially when I learned or read about when I get engaged with some of your LinkedIn posts, and especially the one
Sure.
about the pizza party. So,
Yes.
can you share with the listeners why and what made you do this with this pizza party and what you did?
Yes, of course. So I know I'm an anomaly, and I hear that all the time for purposes that I just bring the thoughtfulness or putting myself in someone else's shoes into the other end of the spectrum. And I own that. And I know sometimes it could be a little rich, decadent, but at the same token, I see the impact that it has, and it's not going to change. The reason why I did that is because it always brings it back to what do organizations do to value and recognize the people that might be just growing their career, starting out in their career, but also that probably at times has the ugliest role in any organization. Sometimes it is, what I don't want to call it ugly disrespectfully, but not the most prestigious that many people, even when they don't have jobs, are not going to sign up to be a custodian or a janitor or
Right.
housekeeping because while it is a wonderful profession that brings in a paycheck, it isn't the most glamorous, if you will,
No.
as opposed to other professions. And so, yes, when I went on vacation, I realize all the time, like, wow, this room is spotless. Wow, going from the elevator to the hallway is spotless. And I see, the housekeeping staff just working really hard. And I did this back in the day at PwC where we had all the housekeeping staff and I went to their rah-rah, what they call in the morning at Monday at 9 a.m, or excuse me, it was probably like 8 a.m. And I asked the general manager, can I be a part of that so I can just thank them? And there's always this, no one's ever done that. No one's ever asked that. But I wanted those individuals to know that what they did, the majority would overlook. But I wanted them to know that it was noticed. So same thing, fast forward to my vacation. Yes, I see, just a very clean hotel, smells great, but it's not the general manager that's doing it. Sure, he's leading the efforts, so I said, you know what? I want to have a pizza party with these people and I want to host pizza, cookies, sodas, whatever in their break room. And were there tears? Yeah, because there was a shock and awe of no one's ever done this. Like no guest will go out of their way, even, at times to say thank you. And so I was saying it in English, and there was an individual that was translating it in Spanish to essentially just say thank you, and that your hard work of wiping the mirrors, wiping the door handles, and that the hotel rooms are so clean, the hallway is so clean. I just wanted to say thank you. And it went over, of course, more of a shock and awe. But I do believe organizations tend to forget who does keep their lights on. And
Yeah,
it doesn't necessarily mean the staff level. It just means that organically you are going to have lower level staff, and then you have higher mid manager to executive. But those people that have been raised through the ranks at times forget where they came from. We all started at the bottom at some point. We all had the yucky roles where back in the
right.
day we had to fetch coffee or whatever. So I just believe that it's extremely important to remain present. I think it's extremely important to acknowledge all levels in an organization, and not to forget the people that are in the shipping room sending out your packages on time,
I
the
agree.
ones that are problem solving, that have to call FedEx and be on hold for an hour for your package to get there on time, that are feverishly working to move the dial. And I think all too often organizations forget those individuals that do, in all due fairness, keep the lights on. And so, yeah.
I love that. You know why? Because there was a story that stood out, and I just think it just shines light on really just your humanity, and that's why
Hmm.
human back in human resources to me.
Yes.
I love, I just love that because when I was doing my master's here in
Sure.
London at 50, and it was a big thing. It was tough because I'd been a lawyer, and it's like you have to lose your ego at the door, and it's
Yes.
because you're I didn't have this background. It was something new, something different. And one of my favorite professors was kind of talking about that very thing, being, the people at the very bottom versus the very top, and how everybody is important. Everyone plays a role. And she told a
Yes.
story about this basically custodial janitor at NASA. And he, someone asked him one day, I don't know if he was getting coffee, and he was outside the building, and they said, well, what do you do? And he said, well, I build rocket ships. And he was like, they said, wow, that's amazing. What exactly do you do to building rocket ships? He's like, well, I'm there the very early mornings, and I get everyone's offices looking nice and the building looking clean. Um, but he builds rocket ships because he does. I mean, it's just like, did you see the NASCAR movie with Brad Pitt?
Yes.
I loved that movie. I feel like
So did I.
that should be shown in every organization. It should be just like,
Agreed.
it should be like, I don't know, a movie night or a
I
movie
agree.
afternoon.
I agree.
I mean, I wasn't really that interested in seeing because I'm not that interested in NASCAR, but I
Hmm.
was going with my 78-year-old father-in-law, and I was like, oh,
Sure.
let's go see this. And it just sat with me. I
Yes.
mean, they were gaining these like tiny little seconds because of
Yes.
they were working together and each appreciating
Yes.
others' work. So I
Yes.
couldn't agree more. And I think that's if you can impart that gift to your children and to your employees, their lives are going to be so much more enriched as well.
Absolutely. And I think, Tia, if I can just interject 1 second, this
Yeah,
doesn't work in the majority of organizations. This is an attribute and a characteristic that at times doesn't get you the interview, that at times doesn't give you a ground to stand on,
no,
because they look at it as fluff. They're
right,
like, okay, well, that's great. You're a nice person, but we need revenue. And I think, to me, what aggravates me even more is like, you are so far removed. In my mind, I get a little bit perturbed, I guess would be the
yeah,
right word,
I
where
agree.
it's like, you have no idea then how to run your ship.
Yep,
Because when you take care of the people that matter the most, all at the bottom, all at the top, all in the middle, people work harder because
yep,
they feel appreciated.
we do.
So and I use that quote unquote, I have been told, it's like, Gabby, nobody likes fluff. I'm like, that's okay. I was like, but I'm not going to change my quote unquote, what I don't deem as fluff. I deem as a level of, like you say, humanity, but just a level of realness,
Yeah,
not dehumanizing the role, that it works. And
right,
it
right.
works because if you give people that opportunity to be real, trust me, you have more loyalty than you can deal with. And
Oh,
you have more hard work than you have to tell them to stop working,
yeah,
rather than someone that's very clinical, very sterile, I say, very dehumanized, if you will. And it doesn't work. And they wonder why it's so difficult to retain. They wonder why it's so difficult that people get burnt out, because they're afraid of losing their job. So, anyway, I'm not going to go on a tangent on that, but it's so amazing to me how much it's not embraced because it's viewed as fluff versus the secret sauce, I believe, on how amazing in professional and personal life, and not necessarily the word cliche kindness, but where a level of respect and dignity goes,
Well,
honestly.
I like that too because it kind of leads me to something you said. And I
Sure.
think it rolls nicely into that because you said it's the simple things. The
Yes.
smallest gesture can make the most lasting impression. And I said this on,
Yes.
speaking to another guest, but
Sure.
it was really, I went to Mass starting Lent, didn't go to
Yes.
during Lent, but I started off well and I
Yes.
went to Mass with my oldest daughter. And this particular priest in London, I love him. I think he might even have a PhD. He has a psychology background, but
Sure.
his sermons always kind of bring everything together where things really
Sure.
make sense. And so we talked about people making sacrifices during Lent and what that means. And and he said that oftentimes people are looking for these grand gestures, these big things, but it's the little things that you're doing in your life that add up. So focus on those little things and start doing those little things. And I think that's what you're saying. And I
It
think
is.
yeah,
It's
I
so
think
simple.
it is.
Another example of that, which I posted about, which I know had a lot of, hits, is, last year I'm going to call every person in the organization to thank them for being here and to say happy Thanksgiving. And at the time it was 463 people. We used to have 1,000, and I probably would still do it over a 6-month period. But the reception to that was like, you just called to say, it was like a 30-second call. It wasn't like I was
Yeah,
belaboring
yeah,
or
I
anything.
know.
But
Right.
you would think, yeah, but you would think that I mean, one gentleman, I won't forget, he goes, Gabby, I have a great job. I have a great family. And at the end of the day, he goes, I know that I'm appreciated here. And this call means the world to me. And he is the one who also reiterated, he goes, it's funny, it costed nothing. It's the simple things. So
Yeah.
did I have to call everybody in the organization? No, but I felt like it and I wanted to. It went over really well. It's just the simple things. I mean, it's also going back to old school. I mean, it
Yeah.
just is
I
pick up
mean,
the phone, you
yeah, I
know?
mean it's like
So,
kind of the five whys or where, when, why, and what when you're a
yes.
journalist. It's like that's how you
Yes.
write a story. It's how you should
Yes.
live your life. So
Yes.
where do you think, and we the audience didn't get to hear it last time, but it was amazing. So where were these types of values and just like illustrations of portraying them? Where did you learn these things? Was it
Oh,
your
I
family?
I
Was it
definitely give it to my family. I mean, I'm sure it's part of my culture heritage of being Italian, but there was no filter ever. It was the expectation. My father, I adore both my parents, but my father, always says, did you put in time or did you actually work? Because, all of his life, he worked with his hands on his knees. He was a stonemason, a marble terrazzo and tile guy. And he owned his own business and he, gave it up after 45 years. He always prophesies how he never took vacation, which I don't think, I mean, he regrets, but um, for me, it was the value of seeing both parents work hard and play hard. And the one thing that we were ultimately always spoiled with was a lot of love. It wasn't the toys. We didn't have any sort of, I should say, fun like many, let's say, do growing up in the sense of sleepovers or that kind of stuff. And at the time you don't appreciate it, but then as you grow older, as they say, you do, and you do, because hard work was never something that was a question in our home. 7 a.m. Saturday mornings, you wake up to do chores, and
yeah,
dad would take us to McDonald's or Roy Rogers as a treat. We have beautiful memories of walking with my mom because she didn't drive at the time until we were 6 or 7, walking in the snow, sleet, rain, to school doing timetables. And we still remember it. We still laugh about, how we got stuck in the snow and when mom started driving. Those are memories that you can't create by a book. They're
right.
created by
I
experiences. And I
agree.
think the values that they instilled in us, it was you can have everything you want in life as long as you work hard on it. But in this household, you're not going to be given anything for free. You want something, you're going to have to work for it. We started working when we were 12 at the rectory, answering the phone for the priest, $4.50 an hour. And you always look back, you're like, gosh, that sounds so archaic. And it was, but you talk about simple things. It's coming home from school and dad expected you to pull the weeds in the azalea bushes. There was
Yeah.
discipline along the way that you didn't see. There was regiment along the way that you didn't see. And then you start seeing it to full fruition, if you will, to fruition, excuse me, when you're working, when you got your first job in, at the grocery store and you're like, holy cow, you're getting off early. All of a sudden, you start realizing how a little judgy you get with other people that
Completely. Yeah, I
yeah,
agree
that
with
start
that.
cutting corners. They don't do 100%. And it's like, oh my gosh, we would get in trouble if that was dad. Like dad would get so mad, right? So
Yeah.
the mom was the softie, dad was the one with the golden rule. And, if you didn't behave, I mean, I know I'll probably get chastised for this, but back in the day, it was the wooden spoon. If you
Right.
started running
That's
away, yeah, mom would chuck her slipper at you, and people would be like, "Oh, that's abuse." And all right, maybe, but
My mom would
it was
like
never
pull
like
her
that.
ear. I'd show
Yes,
you
that
something
too.
if I was
That
behaving,
too.
and it hurt.
And it wasn't often because now,
No,
I mean, not for nothing, we had more fear of getting in trouble
we
than
did.
we did with entertaining. Let's try it. We never snuck out of the house. We're like, no, it's not worth it. Thanks. And so I think growing up, there was a balance of you knew your lines,
I said to
even
people, I
going
was
to
like, I never
church.
had curfews. My mom didn't do that. But then I thought, okay, but I wasn't going to do anything wrong because I
Right?
was,
We
I
we
mean,
didn't dare. We didn't
yeah,
dare. And and someone says, "Well, do you feel like you missed out?" I think the only thing I probably say that I would do different is I would go away for college. We stayed home because we had to pay for our own college. We went to
yeah,
University of Maryland College Park, great university,
right.
but we paid for our own school. So we got in-state tuition and we stayed home. But if that was the only regret I had is like, oh, I should have gone away at school, and it's like, well, for what? I did that when I moved away from home after I graduated college, but going back to the values, I do believe it starts at the home. I do believe it
I,
starts with the discipline.
I think that's amazing. And I think that, you had two parents that were together and raised you, but you see it too also in people who have different struggles, that their values are
Correct.
sometimes more aligned. I met this
Correct.
guy, I was with my 87-year-old dad at Walgreens, and the line was really long. There was only like one cashier. And so he was helping check people out, like in the photo department. So I was there
Yes.
and I was like, wow. He goes, so busy. He goes, yeah, I've worked like 3 double shifts. And he's like, I'm the manager, and like everyone's, they all call in sick. And and he's like, I don't understand. It's like, don't they just, I mean, I know if you're very sick, you don't come, but you have to show up. And
Yeah.
I was like, well, how old are you? And he goes, well, I'm 25. He goes, but I've been working since I was 12. My dad left when I was a child, and my mother was diagnosed with MS and was in a wheelchair, and I had to go to work. He's like, and I was like, wow. And I actually got his information because I want him to be on my podcast. And now you
Absolutely.
just reminded me of that. But that being said, so I also think that there's a particular type of resilience too that goes with that.
Yes.
And I think that allows you to impart that in the workplace and the organizations.
Yes.
I think they say, like a lot of child psychologists talk about how when parents make things too easy for their children and they don't allow them to fall or don't have high enough expectations, you're really not creating like a human that's going to be that productive. And I think I imagine that you felt that if you made a mistake, they might be a little hard on you, but you
Yeah.
push harder to be better.
Well, I think that's the accountability piece, and I'm not certainly here to judge that everybody should have a rosy and peachy, life, growing up. I mean, there's a lot of trauma out there. There's a lot of heartache out there. But I do believe you see the difference between people that want better and the people that settle and play victim. And I'm not here to judge that either. Sometimes you have to be in that victim role, and that's your way of survival. Then I say you go survive. But
Right.
I think there's also elements where you do need to take yourself out and in part of the experience and say, I'm in control of what I can do to make it better, and I'm in control on what I can do to make life a little bit richer. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean money, it means experience. And
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, when you can take a step back, and it always goes back to that self reflection, right? Is where do you have the accountability and where do you have the power to feel empowered to make that change? Because you don't need to be stuck. And
No.
sometimes it's just giving people that opportunity, like we do here in our organization, is in some roles, I'm willing to overlook some of those job requirements to say, but you know what? I feel there's a willingness to you that if you were to get this role, you would make it the best ever. And we have several of those stories here. And yeah, do I like to be recognized as the change maker for people that didn't have any hope? Damn right I do. And I'm happy to carry that badge, and I'll continue to do that.
Oh
Do
yeah.
they all work out? Not always, but the ones that do, they're the best stories, I
I,
believe, in the
what
book.
I've learned in my, meek, humble background as a
Sure.
startup founder right now is that I would take 10 people out there, digging ditches that don't have
Yeah.
all of the necessary skills, and other people that
Yeah.
with a lot of kind of degrees and
Yeah.
skills just care and want to get better
Yes.
and want to work hard, because then you feel like they're in there with you wanting to make
Absolutely.
things.
And I'm not remiss to understanding that this isn't the formula that works in every entity, in every
No,
industry,
no.
in every org. It doesn't work in Wall Street. Like, I'm not ignorant to that. And I think that's where people misunderstand and somewhat say, well, you're misunderstanding my kindness for not having common sense. I know not everything works for every model. I'm well aware of that. But I am also well aware that when you bring it back to the basics of the simplicity of what it looks like to be engaging, to have respect, to have dignity, and to give someone the time of day that you may not otherwise do that, you have no idea what storybook they
I mean,
have.
I agree, but I see the thing is I think it should be on Wall Street. I think I understand that on Wall Street the margins are tighter and you're
Sure,
not
exactly.
you get taught.
Yes,
But I think that's what's missing, and that's why
yes,
all of these Wall Street types who make all kinds of money are then
yes,
left holding a bag of like of what society says is successful. They're very unhappy. I mean, if we
yes,
start to bring some of that acumen back and appreciate one
absolutely.
another, and do the little things,
Yes,
then I think that Wall Street will change because they're human
yes,
like the rest of us. So,
yes, absolutely
I don't
agree.
know, Wall Street needs someone like you, to be honest.
I
Um, I
would probably thank them.
I mean, this is kind of like, and you don't want to share it, it's fine. But for you, was there a time or like an instance that you'd want to share with the listeners of a transition or a time when maybe you didn't stick as closer to your values and you remembered and you're like, wow, you're in a bad
Yeah,
place. I mean, was there something
totally,
that you're willing to
totally.
talk about? Because I think it's nice for people
Yeah, I
who
just
do.
I got absorbed in the wrong crowd. And I started realizing, this was probably like 15 years ago, I started realizing that being involved in politics doesn't mean you win.
Mm-mm.
And when I say that, I didn't mean that I took anyone down. I never did that in my career. I never will. I always believe that your work will showcase for itself. If someone wants to kiss, someone else, that's great. Like, go do it. And if that's what
Right,
advances you, have at it, right? Because
right.
I want to be able to go home and be at peace. But yes, there was definitely a regret in my career that I got involved with executive level individuals that I thought, oh my God, like they think I'm cool, I'm in with them. But then those executives were in some hot water and
Mm.
it was guilty by association. I had nothing to do with anything. Not that anything necessarily happened to me, but I got interrogated for guilty by association and
Yeah,
I hated
character
it.
assassination.
I hated it because I'm like, but that's not what I did. And not that it wasn't believed by any means, but I was disappointed in myself. And I did have to I took about a week off, a vacation, but it was to really have some self reflection, which is, you know what? Not everything is gold. And I regret that in my career only for purposes that it was a lesson learned where it was don't hang out just because you think because you think they think you're cool
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you're going to go places because when things go south you're going to go south with them. And of course, how juvenile did I feel? Because I remember what my mother would say, like,
yeah.
I'll tell you who you are by who you hang out with. And I'm like, wow, if
So
that didn't
true.
come back, it's the truth. So for me, that moment was you know, going out to a dinner with executives and I was representing HR. And whatever happened thereafter, I have no clue, but it was, oh, Gabby was at the dinner. And I said, yeah, I was, but I wasn't part of anything else. And I thought, did I really need to go to the dinner? No, but I was so flattered by the invitation that the invitation really wasn't to have HR at the table. The invitation was so that it was an optic of having HR
Yeah,
at the table. And I got so absorbed into the wrong thought and ideology of what that meant that it meant nothing. And what it did mean is it meant that to me, there was a strike. And
yeah.
I hated that I had that
I
mark for
agree.
myself
I agree. I
because
think
it wasn't worth it.
I mean,
What I thought was like a compliment, prestige, and you finally got that recognition.
yeah.
Then you started realizing it's like the only recognition I need from is God. Nobody is above touching the ground with the same 2 feet. And if that wasn't a wake up call in my late 20s and I didn't learn from it, then I don't believe I would be where I am today.
I
And that
think
was hard.
I like that story, and I mean, it's honest, and I think that's
Yeah,
helpful to people because I think we all have times in our life where we do, you take a couple steps backwards, and then you have to
correct.
get brought back to like, is this who I am?
Correct.
But some people decide they're not going to be that way. My husband and I talk about
Correct.
that a lot on Wall Street, and he's like, at a certain point, as like you have, they might be making more money and things are fast.
Sure.
You have opportunity and time. You have to make a conscious decision. Am I going to be a good person or am I not?
Yes. Yes.
And guess what? There is that it's an awful thing, and my mother said the same thing. There's guilt by association,
Yes.
and yes, and those things ring true. And I think you've
Yes.
probably done the same thing with my daughters because I think
Sure.
a little or a lot of bit of guilt is
Yes.
the worst thing in the
Yeah.
world, and
Yeah.
it makes you reflect. I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what value alignment's all
It
about.
is.
It's what am I giving to the outside world? What am I giving myself? What kinds of
Yes.
decisions am I making? How are they affecting me? But how are they affecting people around me?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
no, I appreciate that. Um, so I won't keep you all day, but I could.
Fine.
I have a question. I've never asked this one before. Usually I ask
Okay.
a question about how people would want somebody to toast them, like at their next big birthday. But I feel like you've imparted so many like really great nuggets of wisdom that I think I could give a toast for you. But anyways, see what you think of this question. So, what version of you do you think you're protecting always? And what version of you are you becoming? Because we're always changing, we're always growing.
I think the version of me of protecting is ensuring that I don't change because of how society defines what kindness looks like. And I think the one thing that I'd like to drive towards, even if it is the change, is being the one that's not misunderstood, that kindness is for free.
Love.
And to me, it speaks volumes. And, it's ironic. I just had a milestone birthday, and I never knew that people, not that because I would do it, but when it's for you, you feel a little bit like, wow, you're going to fly in for me? You're going to incur a hotel and airfare for me? And the toast that went on that evening, if it didn't remind me who I am as a human being, as hard as I am for on myself about how I grade myself on the daily, or, yes, my downfalls, being stubborn, and at times you push me to a limit. Yeah, I'm gonna have attitude. Yes, I'm gonna be probably unkind, because
You're
we're
not going to
human.
show it in your face as much
Right,
anymore.
exactly. That, and he was there, which is so
Yeah.
funny. After 30 years, here's my old
Wow.
boss showing up, and those gestures, those words, speak volume to me about my legacy,
Yeah.
which is, kindness to a fault, God to a fault, and having the values that do stick out amongst the rest,
I
and they
love that.
shouldn't change.
I love that, and that's beautiful.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's good because it's almost like it was an inverse of each other. Your answer of that question. You want to be kind,
Yes.
but what you want to protect is that kindness, and you want to then
Yes.
what you want to become is that this is something that's real.
Correct.
One quick question for you. Just
Yeah.
have you read Mitch Albom's book, like the five people you meet in heaven? I think
I
it's
have years ago, but
me
yes,
too.
I need to read. You know what? I'm going to reread it because when I read it years ago, it had such an impression on me,
Me too.
honestly.
Me too. I read it
Yes.
years ago, but I always think about it because I think that's the things, I think that what I take from this conversation and this podcast with you, which I think is really
Sure.
beautiful to me, is those little bits of kindness, those little bits of
Yes.
just like my mom calls them like God winks. There's just little bits
Yes.
like when I spoke to my first guest on my pilot episode, she suffered great tragedy at her. She lost a son at 21,
Oh
and
my
she just
goodness.
talked about how you you really start to develop more like empathy and but gratitude is what got her through. Just
Yes.
little things that people did,
Yes.
whether it was just holding a door or putting an
Yes.
umbrella over your head. And I think that Mitch Albom talks about in that book how you don't know what kind of effect it has on people. Just some
100%.
little act that you do. And if we can do that
100%.
in the workplace and then we're in group settings and we can start to realize, you know what? Maybe when I start looking at my own unconscious biases, which is what my model does a lot of,
Yeah.
and I start to think, "Oh, maybe I wasn't treating that person the right way. Maybe my response like wasn't making the project move forward because I made that person feel unsafe. I don't know. I just think I think
Yes.
everyone should get a chance to work with you because I think you really make a
We
difference.
Well, what's funny, just one last thing, what you just said too is, and I guess I want to throw everything out there because I do believe words can make an impact, even if someone in passing hears it. Is, I talk about not forgetting the individuals that are the ones that keep the lights on at night, right? Or
Right.
during the day, regardless. But then I equally say, I always try to transfer it outside of work all the time, right? And I think what society also, what we tend to fall at, and because it's just fresh in my mind, is we forget about the elderly. You say it's the
Yeah.
simple things, and it's a simple phone call, it's a simple note, it's a simple Instacart order,
Yeah.
with flowers
Totally. I
or a
did this
cake.
for my mom yesterday.
And
Strawberries.
yeah, yeah. And
Like,
you get
oh
the
my
phone
God.
call of people, this woman on Saturday called in tears, and she's like, I was sitting out on my front porch, and she's like, I was having a sad day. And all of a sudden, I see this woman. She has this twang, and I see this woman coming up with flowers and cookies. And I thought, oh, that's got to be from Miss Gabby, because nobody ever sends me anything. Crying. because she was having a tough day, feeling lonely. She feels like she was forgotten. And she's like, it was like an answered prayer. And I'm not saying this to tout myself, not even in the
No.
little. When I explain these stories, it's in the hopes to be part of a change. And it's like, you know what, today I'm going to do that. I'm
Yeah.
going to go and send cookies to someone that, is elderly. So again, I know I go to the extreme, but it's
No,
so full
I think you're
circle. It's
right
so
because
full circle to
they
me.
are, and
So
those
full
and
circle.
they are and they do feel forgotten about, and they don't have the
Yes.
same autonomy and the same
Yes.
connections, and they don't feel like what they say matters as much. So
Yes.
I love that
Yes.
ending. And as
Full
just
circle.
Mother's Day passing, with my
Yes.
parents being elderly, and I'm sure yours the same. That's a
Yes.
nice way.
Yes.
But
Yes.
thanks, Gabby. I love speaking with you, and I think
Yes, this was awesome. It makes me feel alive and I appreciate it. So
well,
this
I'll
is amazing.